The outbreak. This is not the flu. Atlanta, CDC headquarters. 2:13 a.m., Dr. Ethan Cole sat motionless in his office, staring at the monitor in front of him. The numbers were flashing red, climbing every second. Deaths, 350,000 plus new infections. Unknown recovery rate, 0%. A week ago, it was just another flu strain. Something nasty, but manageable. Now the world was falling apart. Outside, Atlanta was eerily quiet. No honking cars, no bustling streets, no voices, just the sound of distant emergency sirens, wailing like ghosts in the night. His phone vibrated on the desk. He barely glanced at it. There was no point. Every call, every email, every desperate government request, it was all the same. Fix this. But how could they fix something they didn't understand? The television in his office suddenly flickered on, an emergency broadcast overriding all channels. Breaking news! The death toll has exceeded 350,000 in just 1 week. The feed cut to a makeshift field hospital in New York. Ethan's stomach clenched. Rows of bodies covered in white sheets lined the floors, stretching down the hallways. The camera zoomed in on a doctor, his face pale, eyes hollowed by exhaustion. We don't know what's happening. They're not dying. They're changing. Ethan felt a chill creep up his spine. The broadcast cut to a security camera feed from a hospital in Los Angeles. A patient who had been declared dead 20 minutes ago lay motionless under fluorescent lights. Then, his eyes snapped open. But there was no white, no pupils, just pure, bottomless black. A nurse gasped, stepping back in horror. The patient sat up violently, his mouth opening wide as if gasping for air. Then his head jerked toward the camera. His mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. The feed cut to static. Ethan felt his breath hitch. This wasn't a flu. This was something else, something they weren't prepared for. The truth behind the virus. Project Lazarus. CDC headquarters, 2:47 a.m. The phone on Ethan's desk rang violently. The screen showed unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Ethan, listen to me. You need to leave now." A voice, low, urgent. Ethan froze. "Dr. Harrington?" Harrington was his former mentor, a legend in virology, but he had disappeared years ago. Now he was calling him in the middle of the night. "They know you're investigating." "Who?" A long pause, then a whisper. "Not the government." "Then who?" "Project Lazarus." Ethan's fingers tightened around the phone. Project Lazarus, a top-secret military experiment, rumored to have started in the 1950s. Officially, it didn't exist. But the rumors? They spoke of something buried, something hidden. "Ethan," Harrington said, voice shaking, "this virus, it's not a mutation. It's not natural. It was activated." Ethan felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean activated?" "Because, Ethan, it's not a virus. It's a signal. The unthinkable. They have been here all along." Pentagon, Washington, D.C., 3:30 a.m. Deep beneath the Pentagon, a classified military meeting was taking place. A grainy black and white surveillance tape played on the screen. The year 1947, the location, Roswell, New Mexico. The video showed a downed spacecraft. But the real horror was inside it. A containment chamber was opened, and something crawled out. It looked human, but it wasn't. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, its eyes black and endless. And then it opened its mouth, but it didn't speak. Instead, a high-pitched, pulsating sound came from its throat. A signal. The tape cut to black. On the screen, red text flashed. Project Lazarus. Subject confirmed status. Dormant location. Deep storage. Zone 7, Nevada. The Pentagon officials sat frozen. A new transmission appeared on the screen. Not from Earth. The AI translated it instantly. "The hosts are ready. Phase 2 initiated." A military general's voice cracked. "What the hell does that mean?" It means, another voice whispered, they were never gone. The infection takes over. They are everywhere in New York City, 5 a.m. Sarah Mitchell woke up gasping. Something was wrong. The room was silent. Her phone, no signal. Then she noticed the shadow outside her apartment door. It wasn't knocking. It wasn't moving. It was just standing there. Then it spoke. Sa! Ra! Her blood turned to ice. She turned to the window and froze. Outside, dozens of people stood motionless in the street. They weren't talking. They weren't moving. They were just waiting. Then, they all turned their heads toward her at the same time. The turning point. They are not human anymore. The White House, Washington, D.C., 5:30 a.m. The president stepped up to the podium. Millions watched, but something was off. His movements were stiff, his expression unnatural. My fellow Americans, his voice was too smooth, too perfect. Then a Secret Service agent suddenly drew his gun. His hands were shaking. That's not the president. The room fell into chaos. The president turned to look at the agent. His eyes, they were completely black. The agent collapsed. Then he stood back up and smiled. They have been here all along. The broadcast cut to static. The United States was lost. The final signal, we are no longer in control. The kill switch, 5:55 a.m. Area 51, Nevada Dr. Ethan Cole stood in front of the control panel, his breathing uneven. The glowing red button before him had only one function. Project Purge, activation code required. One press and every infected host in the country, millions of people, would die instantly. The virus would be wiped out. But so would anyone who hadn't fully turned yet. He hesitated. If we do this, we're no better than them. Dr. Harrington clenched his fists. If we don't do this, there won't be a we left. Ethan closed his eyes. His thoughts raced to Sarah Mitchell. What if some of them are still human? What if they can still fight it? What if she's still fighting? A siren blared overhead. Time was running out. Ethan took a deep breath, and then, with a shaking hand, he pressed the button. New York collapses 6 a.m. New York City. Sarah Mitchell hit the ground screaming. A pulse of agony shot through her body. She clutched her chest, feeling her veins burning, pulsing. The infection inside her reacted violently. All around her, the infected froze mid-step. Then, they collapsed. Some let out inhuman shrieks, twisting in pain before going completely still. Bodies piled across the streets. The moans, the whispers, they all stopped. Sarah trembled. The purge had worked. But then, a whisper echoed in her mind. You think this ends with them? She gasped, hands clenching against the pavement. You think you've won? Sarah's heartbeat slowed. She wasn't dead. She had survived. But how? The fall. Judgment Day. A world gone silent, 6:30 a.m. The aftermath, in Area 51, Ethan and Harrington watched in horror as live feeds came in from major cities. New York was in flames. Los Angeles was abandoned. Washington, D.C. was dead. Millions of bodies lined the streets. The infection had been stopped. But there was no victory, no cheering survivors, only emptiness. The cost of survival was too high. Ethan leaned forward, hands gripping his skull. What the hell have we done? Harrington exhaled. We saved humanity. Then why does it feel like we killed it? Neither of them spoke, because deep down they knew the truth. Humanity wasn't saved. It was rewritten. A new signal, 6:55 a.m., NASA Deep Space Monitoring Station. An urgent alert flashed across the monitors. A massive signal was being detected from Earth's upper atmosphere. A voice transmission. The AI decryption software worked instantly. The message appeared in blood-red text on the screen. The hosts are ready. Phase 2 initiated. The technicians stared in shock. That's impossible. The infection is gone. Then the lights flickered. Screens glitched violently. And for the first time, they realized something else was coming. The end. Who is left? Something bigger than death, 7 a.m., New York. Sarah staggered to her feet. Her veins had stopped glowing. Her heartbeat was steady. She was alive, but something felt wrong. She felt empty. And then the whispers came back, louder than before. You don't understand. This was never about survival. Sarah's breath hitched. She turned toward the sky. A shadow loomed over the city. Something massive was descending from the clouds. It was not a spaceship. It was alive. And then, in a voice that seemed to vibrate inside her skull, it spoke. We never left. Their final move. Ethan and Harrington watched as every military screen shut down at once. Emergency sirens cut to silence. A soft, rhythmic pulse rippled through the air. A pattern, a heartbeat. The Earth itself was responding. The virus wasn't the invasion. It was the invitation. Harrington stepped back, eyes wide with realization. Oh my God! The transmission system crackled to life one last time. One final, horrifying message appeared. Now, we begin. Humanity is no longer human. Sarah closed her eyes. She could feel it now. Not in her body, in her mind. A new voice, a presence. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid. Because now, she belonged.